The Silly Goose Gang Podcast.
Awesome. So we're back in with episode 76 of the Silly Goose Gang Podcast. We're really honoured and delighted to be joined this evening and this afternoon by Coach Tony Blauer. So, Coach, thanks very much for joining us today.
Yeah, great to be here, guys. And it's funny. We were talking before we started recording about your accents and do I need subtitles and a translator? But I'm good, and it's cool. I have a lot of like I used to come to the UK every year, sometimes twice a year for decades. And I'd go up to Scotland. I played St. Andrews years ago, horribly, but I love where you're from, and the accent is it's romantic. I feel very close to both of you right now.
Well, we're off camera. We're holding hands, Tony. We're really romantic ourselves.
I suppose as well, we need to give a big shout out to our friend. I believe we have a bit of a mutual friend, Marcus Torgerson.
Yeah.
The second time we had Marcus on, in fairness, the first time we had Marcus on, he said we should read out to you. And we thought, we'll give another few episodes. And then we had him on again at the start of the year. And he's like, have you idiots contacted Coach Blauer yet? And we said, no.
Yeah.
Said, idiots, get it.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Very, very funny. His let's talk about him for a second. I did some gigs in Arizona, and he came to that, and we hung out. We went to dinner, and he is super sharp and super funny, but his online persona is deeper and more about self-development and it's just his self-defense side. But there's another side to him. He's fucking very sharp and funny, super intelligent, and way funnier. And he should probably exploit more of that online. I'd like to see.
We love Marcus. He's awesome, and he's helped us without being asked, which is always cool. So where do you guys know each other from? How far back do you guys go?
We used to date, just like you guys. We broke up, but we're still friends. This is the Silly Goose podcast, right? So I can be the Silly Goose, right?
Oh, okay. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So we've just known of each other like through the industry. I mean, anybody who's super serious about self-defense, you kind of know the names. But we've got mutual friends, and we just started chit-chatting online. And then I had him on my No Fear podcast. And I had a really interesting talk with him, and it was I'm hesitating only because some of what we talked about was personal, and I didn't know if I wanted to bring it up, but there was some parts of our conversation where I felt that he was too self-deprecating, and so I challenged him on it live, not knowing how that would go. Like, it was on the Zoom call, right? And I thought it was very impactful, but it brought us, I think it created a type of bond and rapport that we joked about, and we haven't done it, that we should just do like a grumpy old man's podcast where we just bitch about martial artists and douchebags. And it's just the two of us, like those characters on Sesame Street, where we're sitting on a rocking chair going, fuck this. Like, in our day, we couldn't get away with that shit, right? But no, he's a really good human.
Yeah, he is. He's a fantastic character, and I think we made an agreement when we spoke to him in January. We opened up 2022 speaking to Marcus, and we just said we'll open up every year as long as we keep doing it. We'll open up every year with Marcus, because we fucking love that.
That's
guy.
Excellent. That's excellent.
We like that guy. So
yeah.
I'm just looking at you. I was just paying attention there to your t-shirt there, Tony. Spear University. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to grab one of those. Where can I get one of those?
Well, you can email me your address, and we'll see if somehow the U.S. Postal Service will send you one. Let's see how this show turns out. And if it's shit, I'll sell it to you. If it's good, I'll send you one.
Have I told you that you're really handsome?
This one shirt free right away. That's one shirt for free. Yeah, no, we've got a bunch of, I've got the shirt I always wear. I'm trying to see if I have one lying around here. We got some inventory in the garage here. The one I always wear on most podcasts is my No Fear shirt, spelled KNOW. And because I'm usually like, I think that at the end of the day, most people don't realize how fear interferes with everything they do. It can drive you, but a lot of fear just creates doubt and hesitation. And we waste time, we procrastinate. And of course, time is the only resource we can't regenerate. So it's like, hey, should we do this? Should we not? Let's think about it. Well, and I'm not talking about deliberating or sleeping on, an email and reading it again in the morning. I'm talking about like actionable fear. You see somebody at a bar, you go, wow, I think she looked at me. I can't, and then someone else walks up and asks her for a date, or you wait too long on a business idea and then someone else beats you to market, or you're standing in let's turn it into self-defense. You're going, I should do something. I should run right now. I'm too scared. And all of a sudden, boom, like violence loves speed. So my big thing as I've been teaching now 43 years, studying violence, fear, and aggression, and have created like several tangible programs used by tier 1 military, SWAT teams, armed response, all the way down to bodyguards. Our systems all through the UK. Every constabulary in the UK teaches the firearms, close protection. And with that kind of legacy, you think, well, what's your favorite course? Is it your operator course? Is it your ground fighting course? Multiple sale? My fear management. That as I get older, if I had to pick just one thing to teach people, it's how to look at fear differently, how to lean into fear, and it doesn't mean like you study it and then you have no fear, like no fear, which is why we have the slogan or the name, the branding, no fear. You got to lean in and get to know it and understand it, and then use it. But all of this rant is about this idea of, I've created like probably the world's first behaviorally based self-defense system, spontaneous protection enabling accelerated response. That's what SPEAR stands for. And it's about weaponizing the startle flinch. And everybody has hardwired in them a startle flinch. And, but it's fear that triggers a startle flinch. And when you flinch, it's fear management that makes you front towards enemy, face the bad guy. It's fear management that makes you run for cover. And it's fear management that makes you charge the threat. And so I'm going to end my rant here, but just like, if you said to me, you could only pick one course the rest of your life, is it the gun course? Is it the hand-to-hand course? Is it I'd go, it's our No Fear program. Because if you don't manage your fear, you don't manage to fight. You can't give yourself permission to engage in business, a relationship, or managing violence if you don't understand how to control your fear.
Yeah. I mean, I've competed boxing and jiu-jitsu, Tony, to quite a decent level. And when you speak to some young guys in the gym and you ask them if they're scared or they have some fear about fighting, and the ones that say no,
right,
you're full of shit, because everybody's got that fear. If you're fighting, it's a real thing, and the fear can be twofold, like you're saying. It could be the thing that drives you, but it can also be the thing that stops you pulling the trigger. If you're in there and just that split second, I think about it in terms of like looking down the barrel of a gun and not taking your opportunities because you're just thinking about it too long. What's coming back? I'm gonna get my nose broken, and that's what stops you pulling the trigger. So yeah, I think the fear is a massive part in fighting. If you want to call it, self-defense or fighting, however you want to talk about it, but such a massive part.
I don't know if you guys saw. Obviously, I agree with you. I don't know if you guys saw. In the last year, a lot of interviews with George St. Pierre, and arguably one of the greatest MMA fighters ever. Anecdotally, an old acquaintance of mine friend of mine. He's from Montreal. That's where I used to live. In fact, before he was Rush St. Pierre, I gifted him some of our high gear to practice his ground and pound with David Loiseau back at the old TriStar gym. So it's kind of like a funny history. He used to bow to me in his Kushinkai karate gi. He'd be in the karate class in another room. And because I was in the magazines, I was on magazine covers and all that shit. He'd see me and he'd go, Sensei Blauer. And we never, like, I always trained in like t-shirts and shorts. We didn't make people bow and anything like that. So it was always, when he got into MMA and then became Rush St. Pierre, it was kind of cool to obviously like, oh, wow, I knew this guy when, he was, still showing up in the gi. But all of that to say, in recent interviews, he would say over and over again, the worst day of his life was fight day. He was so scared. Every time. Mike Tyson used to throw up before his fights. He'd cry before some fights. A lot of people, if you're not like a hardcore historian junkie, you don't know that. You see pictures of Tyson throwing body shots to people and uppercuts. If I said to you, like, hey, 15 minutes ago, that guy was puking in a little pail in his room because of fear, you'd think I was full of shit. But you're absolutely right, man. The people that go, I'm not afraid of anyone, fuck that. They're obviously, they're compensating for some sort of fear. And that's not a challenge. It's just this idea that really quiet people who have their shit together, they're much more capable in many regard because they're in control of their skill set and their decision making. That's not to say that somebody, there's a lot of scared cowards that are very dangerous.
Yes,
right? Because they're running around with a gun or a knife or a crowbar or they get, whatever. But yeah, there's a great Customato quote. He was Tyson's original trainer, but it's quite long, but the paraphrase that he says, that fire can warm you and cook your food, but if you don't understand it and it's not used properly, it can also burn you. It can burn down your home, right? It can kill you. So it's understanding that heat, and of course the fire metaphor here is fear.
Yeah, I know. A friend of mine, a guy that I used to spar with, I was about the only person that would spar with him when we were boxing. He punched like a fucking truck, and it didn't make. One of those guys who it doesn't make sense. And he could not control nerves. He never really did anything. I seen him knocking people out in the gym cold, 1 punch knockouts in the gym with 16-ounce gloves on. And he could not control his nerves and he didn't do anything because of those nerves. Yeah, I can remember thinking, like, man, if I fucking hit like you,
right?
I wouldn't be scared of anything because he had that, I always thought I would have liked to have, held pads for, whoever modern guys, Deontay Wilder, Gennady Golovkin, any of these guys that really hit hard to go, what's the comparison? Because he had that,
right.
He would jab you on your arm, on your forearm, and you'd go, fucking hell. Like, it was outrageous power. And he could not control nerves. So he didn't do anything. And you just think, man,
you can see that at the highest level. You see that in golf, you see that in boxing. But you also see that in business. You see that in, I'm not a good guitarist, but I love music and I used to play guitar and I would take lessons. And my guitar instructor back in Montreal, is that what you call it? Guitar?
I guess so.
Yeah. I don't know. It just sounded weird as I said it. Guitar instructor was like my self-defense instructor and my guitar instructor got in a fight, but it was just this. And he was a studio musician, really cool guy. His name was Mark. And, I remember when the Dire Straits hit the scenes, right. And released their original hits. And I remember coming in and going, dude, have you heard like this guy, Mark Knopfler, play like this Dire Straits, I think, or art? And he goes, no. And I play the song and immediately, like, he can play it. He was one of those guys. You hear it and he's playing the chords and then he's doing the solo and any song. And then because he was a studio guy. So he played on like a Sting album when Sting recorded up in Montreal and shit, like he was that good. And and cool, you know. And I looked at him and I said, dude, why aren't you a rock star? Like, you're so fucking amazing. And he said, you know, like, well, my wife works and I take care of the kid and I don't do drugs and I don't like parties and all of that. And that was a good answer for me. I was in my like late 20s at the time. He was a young dad. And I went, what a cool answer. Yeah. But then years later, I realized, who would want to be a fucking rock star? There are rock stars that don't do drugs and don't go to parties or go and then leave at 11, right? In other words, and I'm hypothesizing, I've lost contact with him, but I think it was more of an unconscious, unresolved fear of, would I do drugs? Would I get lost? Would I get divorced? Would I become that absentee father? Because that's a story like for, you know, pro fighters, you know, really, really successful entrepreneurs, third wife, 2 heart attacks, you know, success really corrupts people. But what is that? You know, like, to me, when you peel that onion, it comes down to, what are you afraid of? Just where's your integrity? Just do the right thing. If I drink too much, I actually get funnier. I know that's hard to believe, but if I and better looking, just FYI, whoever wants a free t-shirt. But what I'm saying is, like, if I drink, it amplifies the qualities I want to be. I'm nice. I'm funny. I don't know if that sounds obnoxious on the show, but I know people that when they drink, it's like they turn into complete assholes.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
You know, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's the same thing with money. It's the same thing with fear, right? I
think quite a lot of that is self-sabotaging. I really believe that is, you know, people. You know, fun. I was talking about this just recently in the sauna after the swimming session, and we were talking about, you know, similar people we know. And I was talking about one guy in particular who would always start something, you know, Muay Thai, boxing, jiu-jitsu, and get good at it quite quickly, and then just move on to something else. And I think didn't really want to compete, and it would just self-sabotage yourself.
Yeah.
Just stop. I don't know if it's a fear of failure. I don't know what the inner workings of that is, but I think
it'll be a fear of success.
Fear of success. They can't deal with the pressure. I don't know what it is, but so we have you know, hard to believe this, but in Scotland there's a real drinking culture, and everybody knows some young guys who are normally football, soccer, who are unbelievably talented and ruined the whole thing from drinking when they were 16, 17 years old. Yeah. And it's a real Scottish culture thing where we have some really good athletes who fucking throw it all away. And I think it's a fear of failure, maybe a fear of not quite being good enough. And it ruins so many careers. It's
huge. And it's one of the things, like, so, you know, I've been studying the psychology of fear. I mean, my whole life, I didn't realize I was on that journey. But as a young kid, you know, I was afraid. Like, I was a really good wrestler, but I hated competing. I didn't understand the adrenaline, the physiology changes, the shallow breathing. Bless you. And I grew up on skis. You know, if you live in Canada, you're either a hockey player or a skier. Mm-hmm. And in my family was a ski family, and I got really, really good. I mean, competitive skiing, and I skied my ass off all the time, but I never won a race. Every time there was a race, I'd catch a tip or ski off the course because I couldn't control myself, and I was sabotaging accessing that flow state. But I know now it was this performance anxiety that I had, and whether it was specifically, I didn't want to let my parents down, my team down. Was I really this good? Was I didn't think I, it doesn't matter. And I use these generic examples because when you peel the onion, what you're left with is, I'm afraid of something. And then it's for you to, through your own introspection, to figure out what that is. And that's really how, I'll use a big fancy word here, people self-actualize. That's how you become the best version of yourself, is like what do I really love? What is my purpose? Excuse me. Clear my throat. And then, to go back to what you're saying is like this guy could have been a pro footballer, but he's in trouble with the law. He's getting in fights every Friday night. There's something that we're not teaching kids. And this is one of my big missions now, is getting our No Fear program into the hands of parents. And I got asked recently by a guy he's become a good friend of mine, but he's my tattoo guy in Vegas. And he had a 10-year-old son. He calls me up a few months ago and he says his boy Salem is developing anxiety from all the mandates and the masks, and he's got to play sports with masks on. It's going on 2 years. He hasn't seen anyone's face. And he said, will your No Fear program help him? And I said, well, I don't know your son, but you're afraid for your son, right? He goes, yeah. I go, there you go, bingo. So the No Fear program's for who? It's for the person that has the self-awareness to go, I'm worried, because worry is part of the fear umbrella, fear bucket, if you will.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, you're his dad. You can have your son raised by a communist teacher or a Marxist teacher or a socialist teacher. I mean, who knows what he's getting exposed to in school?
Mm-hmm.
We know that's a real problem.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, so if you're not homeschooling, you're his coach, you're his dad, you're his mentor. So you do the program and then guide your son. Anyways, he gets the program. And I was in Vegas a couple of months ago. I sat down and he hands me a handwritten letter. I got it in my office. I'll run and grab it if you want it. But it's from this 10-year-old boy saying, thank you for this program. And, one of our big lines in it, one of our big reframes in the program is this idea that you can't be brave if you're not afraid, that the primary ingredient in courage is fear. If you're not afraid of something and you do it, can we call that courageous? Of course not. Yeah. But if you're afraid to do something, whether it's step in the ring, whether it's assert yourself, give a speech, quit your job, start your own company, that takes courage. So there's going to be fear. So it's like, it's this wonderful, you can't be brave if you're not afraid. And it's reminding average people, and not just average, because Tyson will say it now, and St. Pierre and Navy SEALs, and like people who aren't being macho about it will go, yeah, we're afraid, but we know we need to do the job anyhow. Yeah, so we do the job afraid. And that's the message. But the point of this here is that had I been exposed to this as a kid, I'd have won some ski races because I was that good. Had I been exposed as a kid, I'd have won some wrestling tournaments because I was amazing in practice. I wasn't the last kid picked, but I'd go out there and I'd be like, why am I so fucking scared? And I was confusing anticipation of the violence and the activity with skill. Yeah. And that's what happens to the footballer or the boxer, like your friend with the big hands.
Yeah.
He was confusing the nerves that he felt with the skill that he had. Just and this, like athletes are so superstitious, right? So I've coached fighters and they're like, oh fuck, I forgot my lucky this and lucky socks or lucky wraps. And I'm like, dude, your left hook has nothing to do with your socks, trust me. Right. But if the athlete thinks he does, that's where his head's going. But that's fear.
Yeah. It's totally
crazy.
I was at a talk. Oh, looked like we froze up there.
You're back.
Oh, I was going to say there, Tony, froze briefly, but I was at a talk 2 weeks ago by Jason Fox, who's an SAS soldier. I think you can still hear us. And he was saying it's your body gets you to the battlefield. It's your brain that wins you the battle, which seems to tie in very closely with what you're saying, like the idea of, controlling that fear, that adrenaline dump. is a key part of the process, whatever you're doing. And like you're saying, I publicly speak for a living as a trainer, and a lot of people have a fear of standing up in front of people and speaking. So some people are like, oh, I can't believe you do that. But for me, there's no nerves, there's no fear, because it's what I do day in, day out. So you're right, it's not brave, it's not courageous. I'm comfortable doing it. But for someone who has that anxiety of stepping up, and I see it when I'll say to them, you've got to go up and present to the group your findings of whatever. And you see the people not holding their paper, or their hands are sweating. And for them, it's a brave act. Although it's a small act in the grand scheme, it's a brave act, because they're nice.
Listen, you can practice courage. So two things with the SAS quote, you know, there's an old from like, just in neuroscience in general, the mind navigates the body. There's a lot of people say, oh, muscle memory. There's no such thing as muscle memory in the literal sense. You got neural patterns. Neural patterns are, you know, you've trained your neuron. You got a myelin sheath that helps the signal speed, blah, 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 neuroscience. But there's no, if I cut off my arm and I put a gun in my hand, it's not going to shoot somebody because it's not attached to my body. There's no muscle memory in the literal sense. And I use that graphic example because we got to be attached to the problem. I like to tell people no awareness, no chance, but it's the mind that navigates the body. So I agree with your was it Jason, you said, the SAS guy?
Jason Falk. Yeah.
Jason, you know, but part of that, and this was my exploration over the last few decades, is there's all these really like amazingly inspirational people like Jason and other people. You know, you can love or hate Tyson, but you know, he'll tell you, you got to make friends with fear. You got to do, you know, you got to, but unless people who go through it and then acknowledge it inspire us. But what I realized was there were thousands and thousands of people that aren't the unicorns in the industry. Like Tyson's a unicorn, St. Pierre's a unicorn. You know, I got a buddy of mine, Mike Ritlin, he's retired Navy SEAL. I was on his show, you know, long form podcast, the Mic Drop, and we were talking about fear, and he said, you know, that anybody who like, you know, who says they weren't afraid during battle is just lying. You know, that he says we'd be stacked outside a house. We knew everyone in the house was going to try and kill us. And we still went in and we were scared, but we were trained. And this is what we signed up for. So you went and did it. So, but it's an interesting thing, but you hear stuff like that, but the average person, like I consider somebody who goes through Hell Week, becomes a Navy SEAL, a unicorn compared to the rest of the population. They've done something and they've created an emotional, psychological adaptation. And to Jason's point, the people that get through that type of selection training have stronger minds. It's not the person with the best body, it's the person with the strong mind. But yeah, I mean, you know, all of this stuff resonates. And I wanted to ask you a question. You know, when you say, hey, like I'm very comfortable talking to, and you know, this number one fear in the world for most people is public speaking. Not getting dragged to a secondary crime scene and then raped and murdered. It's public speaking. So I make this joke sometimes when I'm doing my talk on fear management, especially to, let's say, university students or like a younger population. I go, hey, what's your number one fear? They're, oh, public speaking. I go, not date rape, not getting abducted, not, they're like, would you rather make a speech or get murdered? And they're like, well, and I get that blunt and that graphic with them just to show them like how ridiculous that is. And then I break it down, but I tell people, because I like to be honest, I'm not afraid of speaking. I've been doing it for years, but I qualify that by if I'm truly honest, it depends who's in the audience. It depends how big the audience is. So if I change, and I use this example, I go, you know, what's the difference between swimming in a pool, swimming in the ocean off of Bermuda, coast of Bermuda, or swimming in a lake in northern Scotland? And, you know, people start thinking Bermuda Triangle, Loch Ness Monster, and like, so I'll get the group, I'll go like, what do we know about lakes in Scotland? And then someone will go, Loch Ness Monster. I go, yeah. So, you know, you're about to go skinny dipping in the lake and it says, watch out for the Loch Ness Monster. And you're like, is this fucking for real? And then hey, Bermuda Triangle, airplanes and ships have disappeared in here. There's some spooky shit that goes on here. What happens? And now I go, so what's the difference? And people start saying, oh, riptides, sharks, stingrays, monsters. And I go, there is no difference. The swimming is the swimming.
Mm-hmm.
What changes is what you're imagining.
Yep.
And if you're imagining death, doom, and destruction, that's going to affect your thinking and your breathing. And now suddenly you're like, and that changes everything.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the most interesting thing. And it's kind of like the next chapter in my business and my life is really trying to inspire people to rethink fear and realize that it can be that fuel to piggyback on the custom quote. How do I use fear to light the way? Meaning I'm going to light it up and it's going to fucking expose shit in me, get out of my comfort zone. And it could be health, fitness, finance, relationship, violence. You know, we don't wake up. We're not going to, no one on this call is going to wake up tomorrow going, you know, I hope something fucking insane happens today so I can practice my resilience. Right. Like, you don't want any bad shit happening, but as soon as that happens, you get a fear spike. You either start hesitating and thinking the worst, or you go, okay, I got to research this. I got to figure this shit out. And that's the whole idea of leaning into fear.
So one, I'll come back to the swimming part because that's interesting. But just what you're talking about, the fear thing. So what I would always say is, I can always remember and having boxing matches, and that moment, and it happened every single fight I had, 24, and
nice.
The point where your coach would put your mouthpiece in, and you would always take a big deep breath and kind of go,
right,
okay, it's time to fucking go. And then you'd be nervous thinking, fuck, what would happen? What this happens. The referee would call you together, touch gloves. And as soon as you threw the first punch, it was business. Everything became, I'm not nervous anymore. This is exactly what I've trained for, and I'm fucking good at this shit.
Right.
So there was the point where it was nervous, you take the big deep breath, and then it's time to go. And I would imagine this is how, you're talking about your friend who's got is it the Mike Drop the Mic podcast? Mike
Redlin.
Yeah, I've listened to that before because he had our buddy Jason Gardner was on that, and so I listened to that one. So I've listened to his podcast. It's that same moment. They will have the same moment outside somebody's door in Afghanistan or Iraq, going, these fucking people in here want to kill me. They hate everything that I stand for, and there will be that same moment where there's a big deep breath. Sure. Somebody kicks the door in and it's game time. Let's fucking do it. Now the consequences are different. I might get knocked out. They might get shot. There's a big difference.
But what you're talking about is interesting, and I'll point out for your listeners and you probably know this, but there's when you do a long, slow exhale, what you're doing is you're cueing and stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system. Yeah. So you got your SNS, your sympathetic nervous system, and that's your let's go, and then parasympathetic. So you don't want to be meditative in a fight. You don't want to be like, okay, just give me a minute. Don't punch me yet. Don't stab me yet. I'm meditating. You don't want to be in that parasympathetic state. But there's that moment. You see this every fighter when they get off a chair, when they get off, bing, the in between the bell goes in between the round. They get up off their chair and they're like. And that becomes a ritual, like a cueing of your body, and everyone will do it. If I've got I had a big meeting yesterday, and I've been working on this for 2 years, and here we are, another meeting, and I said to my wife, I said, okay, I got to go to this meeting, and I said, wish me luck, and she says, good luck. And, I don't really believe in luck, but it's just part of the ritual. And, you're prepared or you're not. But as I walked in my office, I did this. I remember now, because you said it, I remember going, because I know I do a lot of meditation and breathing. I know that slower exhale calms your nervous system. And if, I could jump on the podcast, I could come in here like this, I'm late, and I go, oh, sorry guys, I'm sorry I'm late. The dogs were doing this, and I'm like, and you go, okay, take a deep breath, Tony. Like you would naturally tell me, take a deep breath. Did you guys have kids?
Yep, 3 of them.
Yeah. Any others that you don't know of, maybe? But anyways, we don't talk. Let's
skip over that. Skip over that.
But when you intuitively as a parent, if your kid hits their head or falls down and they're like, you don't want them to hyperventilate, you're going, hey, take a deep breath, because we just know our nervous system does that. But it's it's funny. A few years ago when I had my a pretty serious neck injury, and I really started to study breathing, because it would put pressure on my vagus nerve, and it would develop anxiety. Like I'd be fine. Like this morning, I was beating the shit out of Bob before the podcast, and if I throw shit too hard, I can compress it there. So like right now, my neck's jacked up, and it puts pressure on the vagus nerve. And if I don't control my breathing, my nervous system just thinks something's wrong. So it just starts to speed shit up. And I've got to, dude, there's nothing wrong. It's fucking right. And so that's just like, sharing, being transparent with your audience, sharing some shit. Everybody listening to this needs to study intentional breathing. Until I did, I never realized I was always in super shape anaerobically. I was, 3-4 years ago, I was out in Perth working with some military dudes. I'm 61 now, so I was like 57 years old, and I'm doing stuff with like 28, 30-year-old tactical athletes. And we'd finish like a tactical multiple assailant drill, and they're breathing hard and I'm not. Like my event specific fitness is insane, because I've been doing it for 30 years. So I always took aerobic efficiency and aerobic capacity for granted, because I was always doing these, explosive scenarios, and you develop a sports specific skill set. And then when this happened, I was like, holy shit. And I started to get into that. And now all my athletes that I coach, all the people that I coach, I go, it's almost like, where are they? You ever use those Captains of Crush hand grips? You ever hear those?
Oh, yeah.
So like these guys here, I think they've got 5 or 7 levels, but there's something like I think maybe like a dozen people in the world can close a number 5. They're so insanely difficult and strong. But you can have strong hands from fighting and doing push-ups, but you can also augment that by doing grip strength and doing, picking up rocks and carrying around farmer's carry. So in the same way, we don't realize we can strengthen our lungs and our breathing and our parasympathetic control by doing intentional breathing. So sorry to hijack the call. But it's a life-changing thing that everyone can squeeze in, 5 minutes a day to do. I don't get out of bed without doing a whole breathing routine.
So just to this ties in beautifully, actually, mostly because I'm really smart, but
and good looking.
Just when you're talking about like he's talking about this morning, you have to take a deep breath and kind of go, you're okay. So I do, some open water swimming, training just now for one of the hardest extreme iron distance triathlons in the world. And there's been moments in a loch or in the sea where things are getting a little bit shitty, and you've took some water on, and you have to have that quick moment to go and breathe, to go, you're okay, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But there's a moment of panic where you go, fuck.
Right.
You can't touch your feet can't touch the bottom. You're not in the swimming pool. You can't hold on to the side. There isn't a lifeguard, and you have to have that fucking quick moment of clarity to relax.
Right.
You take some water into a goggle. You've hit a wave. Your goggle gets displaced. You get some water in there. And you can't see it. You have to breathe and go, you're okay, relax,
Right.
sort it out. So that's it's quite an interesting way to compare them. And talking about swimming in the ocean and stuff.
A lot of that work ties into self-talk and being able to communicate. And this actually circles all the way back to the fear management, man. Is how do you talk to yourself? Because that moment of oh, I can't see, I can't breathe. Oh, here comes another set. Oh, fuck. Hold your breath, relax.
I mean, I can relate that to, and I have examples of swimming and having that issue, and I can relate that to, getting caught flush on the chin and going shit, and having to go, okay, step back, put my hands up, tie up, turn them, let the referee do his job, and I could turn that into, rolling, being in a bad position, recover to a good position, relax, try and regain guard, and just relax myself. So I can tie them all together, and I think they all, one helps other, and it's interesting, an interesting exercise to just be able to relax and recover, and have, this is how we get back to the safe point. You'll be okay in this safe point.
Well, what happens is this. So the way I communicate about fear is I created and we'll send you a link to the graphic that you can share. I created something called the cycle of behavior, and it's like a script map that says, here's your scenario, and here's a generic stimulus that puts you in the fear loop, and this is what goes on in the fear loop, and you got to get out of the fear loop. And so there's steps that you could take, and not every one of them is meaningful or relevant, but it just shows you, like if you're in the fear loop, you're stuck. What you're describing when you talk about, okay, I just got hit on the chin, like the inexperienced fighter, falls back, covers up, and he's just leaning on the ropes and opening his body for body shots, or the guy to come in with a Superman punch or whatever, because he panics. You had good coaching or good intuition or a combination. But what you're actually describing is stages, steps in your mind of what you're going to do, because if you do this, you can get to here. And so you've described to me, I'm interpreting that as you've got like this roadmap. I'm lost. No, you're not. You got to go here. You're just taking a fucking detour to get back on the, back on the route that you were on. And that was that you, I remember it was really funny. It just popped in my head. I've been around fighters, combatives for decades. So my kids have. And when we moved to California 12 years ago from Virginia Beach, I was doing a lot of shit. And I said to my daughter, Olivia, who was 8 years old at the time, I said, hey, listen, I've been on the road a lot of crazy shit traveling. I want to just spend a weekend with you. What do you want to do? We're in San Diego area. We've got, I forget what they call it, a SeaWorld down here. You got Disney up in Irvine. We got mountains, we got ocean. What do you want to do? She says, take me to a UFC. And I'm like, really? She goes, yeah. I go, okay, we got to come. You got to tell your mom that you said that, because she's going to think that I told you to say that, right? Like, she's not going to believe that an 8-year-old wants to go to Vegas, right? And she goes, okay. So I take her, and back, this was before SEG, before they sold, the Fertitas sold that big merger. So I knew Dana and people, and I would get tickets and get in. Now you can't, certain people can't. I'm not at that tier anymore, but I could get in there and so I took her there, took her inside the stadium when they're still building the octagon, and she met fighters and got autographs, and we had really cool seats. And Diego Sanchez is fighting, and he's getting his ass kicked by somebody, and all these drunks are around us yelling, Kimura, armbar, triangle. They're screaming shit that doesn't even make sense because they're all drunk, right? You know, drunk. I'm sure you guys have sat at fights, and they don't know that they don't know that you're a fighter, right? So guys are going, man, this guy sucks. You're like, dude, you have no fucking clue. And so she's 8 years old, man, and these guys are screaming and everything. And she looks at me and goes like this. She looks at me, and goes, and rolls her eyes. I go, why'd you roll your eyes? She goes, these guys, they're so dumb. I go, not too loud. There's more of them than us. And and she goes, I go, what do you mean? I go, like they're yelling the wrong commands to him. And they're like, it's triangle choke, you know, like, and I go, well, if you were coaching Diego, what would you tell him? And this is the 8-year-old's advice. Obviously, Dad, he needs to stop getting punched so much. Like that was it.
Solid advice.
Stop getting hit, right? So, anyways, a funny little story that somehow popped into my head there.
That actually reminds me of being at I was at a boxing show in I think it was in Arbroath up on kind of East Coast up past Dundee, and I remember the coaches. There was a guy, and he's getting his ass kicked, and his coaches were shouting at him, throw the right fucking hand, throw a right fucking hand. And I can remember thinking, but he isn't in rage.
Right.
Like, why not tell him? Why not coach him how to close the distance? This is how we cut a ring off. You can't just throw a right hand. This is his coaches. And I'm thinking, this guy fucking for real. It's just, it's one of those things where you're just going, yeah, that's awesome. How do you get there?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny is, I was, you know, Ben Bergeron is. He's
CrossFit guy.
Yeah. So he's like one of the winningest coaches in CrossFit, and coached, you know, Matt Fraser and you know, Sigmund's daughter and all that.
David's daughter and all those girls.
Yeah. So I've known him for years and have been involved in the CrossFit world for many, many years ago, and. We were talking about, because I've got like hundreds of affiliates around the world, and I coach coaches. I train trainers. That's my main business. And I teach them, what's the difference between a teacher and a coach? What's the difference between being technical and being tactical? And what is the coach's journey? And I'm telling Ben this, and he goes, well, what is the coach's journey? And I say, it's technician, trainer, coach. But everyone calls himself a coach, but they're really technicians or trainers. They're like, throw the right hand. That's not coaching. Like that's like saying, widen your stance, make a fist, like, you know. Yeah. And so I would say that the technician understands like the static elements of the game. Widen your stance, get your foot to the outside, keep your hands up, get your hands lower, feint. It's like little, and then the trainer understands things to develop the skill set. So the corner man, as a coach, he might say, hey, listen, you need to stay to the outside more. But to me, that's trainer advice. If we're being like in these literal hats, technician, trainer, coach. The coach, his sole role is to inspire performance. And I tell this story sometimes, and I'm going to share part of it now. As a teenage skier in a big competition, I remember being at the top of the hill. It was above the tree line, so it was freezing as shit. You know, the wind is blowing. And I've already pissed like 5 times. I'm so nervous for this race. I'm a nervous athlete, right? But what do I look like? I'm like this. You know, I got the latest, greatest ski equipment on. It's freezing up there. And you're here like this, and you're warming up and you're stretching. And, you know, I'm on skis. I was about to throw some punches. And, but my coach says to me, he goes, how do you feel, kid? And I look at him and I lie and I go, great, coach. Because we don't teach our athletes to be honest. But it's also on the part of the coach or the teacher or the mentor or the guardian to go, listen, even if you're scared, I need you to tell me, maybe I can help. And I go, oh, I just remembered a great fight story. You guys are going to love this. But I'm there, and my coach says, I lied to his face and I said, "Great, coach." And he goes, "Okay, cool. Listen, the course is getting icy. The middle of the course, gate 50, take that high and outside. There's a huge rut there. Stay away from that because everyone's getting caught in that." I got it. I take off like a batter to hell, circumvent that big rut, get down there. I'm 3 gates from the finish line. I catch my tip, wipe out, get disqualified. I fall so hard, I fall through the gate. And I tell people this, like years later, I realized that when I was standing there waiting to go and I'm going, 3, ready, skier ready, all I was thinking about is, if I'm so good, why am I so scared? And I remember thinking that line, and the first time I said it, my eyes teared up. I was in a seminar. I was teaching in Australia. The first time I said it to the group, and there were a bunch of adults in there, and I said, if I'm so good, why am I so scared? Because everyone had told me how good I was. Are you guys frozen? I think you froze for a second. Now you're back. And I remember my eyes tearing up, and a couple of the adults in the class, you could see them go, and they realized dreams that they had abandoned in their life because they misinterpreted fear for skill or fear for ability, because they fixated on the fear too much. It's very, very subtle and very heavy. So this is one of the things that, as a coach, when I'm training trainers to become coaches, I'm teaching them, like, it's not a one size fits all. You don't read this book on self-help and coaching and then spray that across all your athletes, whether they're fighters or skiers or combat specialists. And I'll give you a great story that I think you guys are going to dig. There's this kid, Sean, that I was coaching kickboxing. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. And he was fighting for a amateur kickboxing title. And I don't know if it's the same in Scotland, but amateur fights are 3 rounds. And if you fight for a title as an amateur, it's a 4-round fight. Is it the same for you guys?
No, it's they're all 3-minute rounds.
Okay.
Now.
Yeah. So in kickboxing back in Canada, then it was 3 rounds as an amateur, and then the title fight was a 4-rounder. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were in the Paul Sauvé Arena, which is a famous boxing arena in Montreal, and so it had a lot of history. And there were it was a pro-am, professionals and amateurs fighting, and we're in there, and it's like the bottom of like Rocky 1, the paint's coming off the wall, like old, the echo of the hallway. It's like spooky and intimidating. And there's this kid, Sean, that I'm coaching, and he's up there and he's moving around and he's shadow boxing and he's doing stuff. And you guys probably know this, but for your listeners, amateur kickboxing, you need to get an 8 kick minimum in you got to throw a minimum of 8 kicks, blah, blah, blah. The rings are 16-foot rings. So your foot on outside, you're 14 feet away. So that's the setup. I say to Sean, I go, "Hey, Sean," and I'm formulating, this is the late 80s. I'm formulating my cerebral self-defense, mental edge, no fear, wasn't a name then, but I know I'm onto something. And so I'm incorporating it. I realize the people who manage their fear manage to fight, that's where it starts. The mind navigates the body. So I say to Sean, I go, "Sean, how do you feel, kid?" And he goes, "Good, coach. I'm nervous, but I feel good." And I look at him, I go, "You're supposed to be fucking nervous. Remember that. You're about to get in a fight." And even if you're standing, or not even, when you're standing across from the guy, and he's standing there, look, this was the Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran era, Hands of Stone. And I go, even if this guy's standing there and he's looking at you like Duran, Hands of Stone, right? Just his face is here, that inside his fucking heart is pounding. And he's got adrenaline raging through his system. But his stoic persona is, let's fucking roll. But inside he's like, I'm about to get in a fight. Mm-hmm. And he goes, thanks, coach. Punch gloves with him. I go sit down and I'm like gloating. I'm a little proud. Look at my guy who's assisting in the corner. Like, that's how it's done. You know, I'm like a little cocky, like this is like out of a Rocky movie, right? And but something starts to nag at me. And this is what I mean, the difference between a coach and a trainer. And I tell people that intuition whispers in our ear, and we either listen to it or we don't. Something starts to nag at me, and I go, what's fucking bothering me? Like, that was a good answer. But then I realized this. I gave him a fucking meme. I gave him a fortune cookie. I said, you've got nothing to fear but fear itself. Thanks, coach. You know, like, right. I gave him some cool, you know, Spartan, you know, like line. You're supposed to be nervous, right? Thanks, coach. So I look at him, I say, Sean. He goes, yeah, coach. I go, I got to apologize for my answer. He goes, why? It was great. It relaxed me. I go, yeah, but I didn't ask you why you were nervous. I just told you it's okay to be nervous. Why are you fucking nervous? You guys see how subtle this is?
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he goes, it's stupid. I don't even talk about it, which means it was something. And I said, it's not stupid if you know what it is. What is it? He goes, nah, it's silly. I go, tell me what it is. Because I'm thinking his girlfriend's ringside, his mother's ringside. He injured his ribs in training, but didn't want to pull out the fight and didn't want, like what? Because each thing that it can be, and for those coaches listening to this call, if you don't identify what your kid's fear is, what your wife's fear is, your husband's fear is, your business associate's fear is, just saying it's okay, we're supposed to be nervous, doesn't help you get tactical or strategic as quickly as you can. You still may adapt, but if I know exactly what the problem is, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm trying to guess really quickly, what are all the things that could be distracting him? And he looks at me, he goes, it's stupid. I go, tell me, please. He goes, I know I've done 10 rounds in training. I know I've got the gas. I've got the stamina, endurance, but I keep thinking this is my first 4-round fight. I've never fought a 4-round fight. And I know that 4 rounds for real with those little fucking ski gloves on, right? Versus 16-ounce gloves is different than 10 rounds in the gym sparring with sparring partners. I told you it was silly, coach. And I look at him, I go, holy fuck, I would never have guessed that in a million years. Now, as fighters on this call, if you're worried about your stamina and you don't have a plan, does that maybe change your output? Or does that maybe make you go hard in the first round because you're worried that you might not make it to the 4th round? Or do you coast a little bit and miss your 8 count, your 8 kick minimum?
Yeah.
And now you lose a round, even though you could have dominated it by just throwing one other shitty front kick. And it was amazing to me. And I looked at him and I went, fuck. I said, Sean, I got you. And he looks at me. I go, can you do 2 rounds? He goes, yeah, of course. I said, so just do 2 rounds twice. And he smiles. He goes, okay. At the end of the 2nd round, I got goosebumps right now. At the end of the 2nd round, squirt some water in his mouth. And I look at him. I go, can you do 2 rounds? He goes, fuck yeah. I said, good. You got 2 rounds. In other words, I teach this when I'm teaching multiple assailants or anything else. I go, never let the math beat you.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I got to do 100 push-ups. Can you do 10 push-ups? Yeah. So just do 10 push-ups 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, you still may fail, but at least you gave yourself like a manageable chunk that you can start going. If you're worrying about the weight on your back, you're already slumped over going, I don't know if I can carry this. He goes out, and this is amazing. I said the size of the ring before, because when you're 14 feet away from the other corner, you can hear them talk.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the 2nd round, I said, hey, can you do 2 rounds? He goes, yes, coach. The other corner, and you know that you know this, Chris, from your earlier fights, you've adapted. You know, your confidence and your own awareness of the event from your 1st fight to your 5th fight to your 10th fight to your 20th fight is fucking completely different. Like in your 1st to 5 fights, you're like, you know, you come back, what round is this? It's the 2nd round. What do you mean, what round is this? Like you lose sense of time sometimes. Your legs feel like they're 100 pounds each.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the 2nd round, we heard the other guy say to his coach, what round is this? It was like perfect, like in a shitty boxing movie. Anyways, he went out and won. He won it. And he did all the work, but it was like what we did is we broke down this long story is I hope if you're reading between the lines, we can't just have fortune cookies when we're looking at fear. We need to get, just like any vision, mission, goal, task, the more specific you can get, the more tactical you can get.
Yeah. It's funny, Tony, because you're talking about that, about your guy talking about doing 4 rounds. We, as the amateurs in Scotland, I think the whole UK was the same, as a novice, so the class of novices under 6 fights, you did 3 2-minute rounds.
Yep.
And then once you stepped up to open class, it was 3 3-minute rounds. And the first time I had to do 3 threes, even though we did threes all the time in the gym, it was like, fuck, it's an extra minute.
Yeah.
It's an extra 3 minutes. And it's and just psychologically, it was a big thing. And I had the exact same thing as you were talking about.
Yeah.
And same thing. And it's, all we spar is 3-minute rounds.
Yeah.
Every round is 3-minute rounds.
Sure.
There's pads of 3-minute rounds. But to go from the 2-minute rounds to the 3-minute rounds in a fight was a different thing. I had the same thing. And you do it and you go, what the fuck was that all about?
Right.
And then you just move on and it's not an issue.
Yeah.
But some people overthink it, and that's the self-sabotage. Now they're not breathing properly, and now they're tighter, and their muscles, lactic acid atrophy and all that shit.
What I liked there was that was some as you were describing that, and the way you're talking to him and the way you're thinking about it and analysing what you said, I was thinking, man, is this Tony or is this fucking Teddy Atlas? that's some Teddy Atlas stuff where when he's telling Tim Bradley in the corner that he's a fireman and we embrace the fire. That's what I was thinking in my head there. That's Teddy Atlas.
It's interesting. I love watching like a D'Amato or Atlas or Greg Jackson, like certain cornermen, you see Greg Jackson in the corner, stressful round. Take a deep breath, man.
Yeah.
You feeling okay? Okay. You're doing good. Follow the plan. Like he's not screaming at the guy, throw your right. You want to hear a great story? Because you guys love fighters. When Sugary Leonard fought Duran, they fought their first fight in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lived there. So I'm at my school and it comes on the news, Duran Leonard at the Olympic Stadium. And I said to a bunch of my athletes there, I said, oh my God, Sugary Leonard's my favorite fighter. I can't wait to meet him. And they go, what do you mean you can't wait to meet him? How are you going to meet him? I go, I don't know. I'll figure it out. So I figured it out. I ended up hanging out with him, playing 21 like it's a basketball game with him, hanging out with him, taking his group, horseback riding, spending time. And then he came back for some meetings regarding taxes and shit like that, like several months later, after he fought Duran in the No Mas fight. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he came back in because I think it was like 5 months later he fought. Yeah. And his whole everything changed. Remember Dundee? He fired Dundee. And all sorts of stuff, because everyone's like, you just fought 15-round fight with Duran, you lost. Why are you taking this fight like 5 months later or 8 months later, whatever it was, in New Orleans? And I remember hearing that he was back in town for some meetings, and I said, I wonder like if he'll get together with me. I mean, we hung out at the first fight, but whatever. But he was like 23, I was 20, so I sent a message to his lawyer at the hotel, and he invites me over.
No way.
And he's alone in his room, and we're there. And I just gotten back from I helped set up a place called the World of Bruce Lee in Hollywood, California at the time. It was 1980, and I'm showing Sugary Leonard pictures of this photo album with me at some of the martial art magazines, and here's a picture of me with Bruce Lee's mom and Linda Lee and the World of Bruce Lee. And I had a picture of we had allegedly Bruce's game of death tracksuit, that yellow and black tracksuit. Yeah. So we had it in the showcase, we were staying there. We had keys to the place. So like one night, me and my friend, like I put on Bruce Lee's tracksuit and took pictures of it. And who knows if it was the real one? They said it was, but so Leonard sees it. He's a huge Bruce Lee fan. He gives me money to go to Chinatown to get him a Game of Death tracksuit. I'm sitting on the floor, hanging out, like I'm like, part of me's going in this picture here, and it's like Sugary Leonard right here, and then part of me's going, oh my fucking god, like this guy, this is like one of the greatest boxers ever to live, and I'm blown away. And he's a Bruce Lee fan, and we're yakking, and I asked him, I said, like, can you explain to me or talk to me about the whole like Angelo Dundee thing? Like, don't you need him to coach you? And he said, at the level I'm at right now, if Angelo Dundee needs to tell me what to do, he should be fighting the fighter in the ring, and I shouldn't be inside the rope. I thought that was really interesting. And it really like a weird anecdote, just because we're talking about trainers and coaches. And what made me think about that, I haven't told that story, I think, ever on a podcast, is when I thought about, let's say, Greg Jackson with a fighter who, let's say, lost a round or won a round, his demeanor was the same. It was like, hey, take a deep breath. Okay, now you can have some water. Like, it was very ritualized. There wasn't like, dude, what are you doing? Like, he wasn't hysterical, right? And so it didn't matter win or lose. We had our game plan.
Yeah.
And we knew what we had to do. And then I just flashed to like Sugary Leonard saying, like, when you're at that level, your coach shouldn't be saying you need to throw the right.
Yeah.
There's something else missing in your, in your training if he's telling you tactics inside the fight.
And funnily enough, in the no mask fight, Sugar Ray made Roberto Duran look like a fucking idiot.
Yeah,
Made him look like a novice amateur. He
it was
absolutely
amazing.
took him to school in that fight, and
One of my favorite fights.
yeah, it's that generation of boxing was, and funnily enough, I was talking to a guy. When you speak to somebody in the sauna, and they talk about boxing.
You spend a lot of time in saunas with men.
I do, yeah.
We're just observing. It just comes up a lot.
I mean, we're naked and we're rubbing oil into each other, but that's,
No, I thought I was going to ask no towels, of course, but go ahead.
It's a different story, but everybody likes to talk about fighting and they don't really understand what they're talking about. So, it's a guy talking to me about, Sugar Ray Leonard, and he's saying, Sugar Ray Leonard was, and he's see, but people forget about that generation. They talk about, the four kings. But you forget about, like, Wilfred Benitez. Wilfred Benitez was an incredible fighter.
Yeah.
And then he was asking about, who do you think's, people always say, who do you think's the best fighter of all, the best boxer of all time? Mike Tyson. And I'm like, no. And I always give the answer, partly to confuse people because I'm an asshole, partly because I think it's genuinely true. And I would say Henry Armstrong. And they all go,
who?
Who the fuck's Henry Armstrong?
Right.
When there was 8 divisions and there was 1 belt per division, Henry Armstrong held 3 titles at the same time. That's great.
Yeah.
But nobody knows who he is. But I love getting into these conversations with people, and it's usually in the sauna because everybody loves to talk, and everybody likes to think. But there was a fight, and there was a big British fight, Amir Khan and Kell Brook on Saturday night, so people wanted to talk about boxing, and but generally they don't have a fucking clue what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So we're just getting into that, but that generation of the four kings were spectacular. Probably never be matched ever again in terms of 4 guys at that level who were all incredible. Hearns, Leonard, Hagler.
Yeah, and my favorite fighter, Sugar Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just all around, like, personality, demeanor. He could stay at the outside, but if he hurt you, he could move in. I love Robinson.
The best punch, arguably the best punch ever thrown was Sugar Ray Robinson's left hook against, was it Gene Fulmer?
The one
it was so fast that it was incredible, beautiful. I think it was Gene Fulmer he fought.
So I don't want you to hate me because I love boxing, but in one of my trips to this is actually crazy. I just got goosebumps all over my body because I've had significant male role models like Robert Conrad in the original Wild Wild West, Sugar Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Robinson. I used to when I was really into boxing for years. I mean, I was, but like during the 80s, I would like get up 5, 6 in the morning, like in the dead of winter in a blizzard. I would go for a run, come back, watch Robinson fights while I ate breakfast and started my day. And I wasn't even a boxer. That's just what I did. I mean, I had my martial arts school. I was teaching self-defense, but boxing was always like a foundational pillar in everything we did. But in terms of male role models, Robert Conrad, Sugar Ray Leonard, Stallone in Rocky in 1976 when Rocky 1 came out.
Yep.
And who else? There was one more. But I ended up stunt doubling Robert Conrad. I was a stuntman for a while, stunt doubling Conrad, and became friends with him to the point where, like on a few trips when I'd go out to LA to do stuff for the martial art magazines, we'd get together for dinner and chat. When he first did his movie in Montreal, I wanted to meet. I was like, oh my God, Robert Conrad. Like I grew up, I was 6 years old watching the Wild Wild West, watching fight scenes. Oh, and of course, the other icon was Bruce Lee, who passed away when I was 13. But I became friends with Brandon Lee, worked on a movie with Brandon, became good friends with him, became not friends with Sugar Ray Leonard, but hung out with Leonard and spent time with him. Worked on Rocky 5 through a connection with Ringside, and I had done some work with Tommy Morrison. And when he got the gig on Rocky 5, you talk about somebody with fucking hands. He hit me with a body shot sparring one day that literally, what are those, the gravity ball thing where you drop the ball here and the ball on the other side moves.
And you hit me.
Yeah, he hit me here and I felt everything come out there. But each one of these people who were iconic in my evolution or influence of me as a fighter, as a coach, as a dad, as a man. And I was telling you, I'm telling 9 stories at once. Robert Conrad, when I in 1980, when I hung out with Sugar Ray Leonard, he gave me his Franklin Sugar Ray Leonard boxing tracksuit and t-shirt. You couldn't buy them anywhere. They were like for his team. So he gave me this. I showed up on the set. I knew that Robert Conrad was a semi-pro boxer.
Okay.
Back in the day, martial artist, but he loved boxing. I show up with this exclusive, you can't get it, Sugar Ray Leonard boxing shirt on, and I see him staring at me. So I walk over to like the food table where he's hanging out, and he looks at me. This is the first day on the set, and I see him looking at my shirt, and I go, you know this guy? He looks at me. I said, you like boxing? And he goes, yeah. I said, I got a gym. He said, do you have any heavy bags? I said, 10. He said, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I said, okay. And we exchanged info. And I called up one of my guys and I said, you got to meet me at the gym at 5:30. He goes, what? Fuck. We never open at that time.
Okay.
I like sleeping in. And I get there. I'm in the ring beating the shit out of one of my assistant instructors when Conrad comes in. I just wanted him to see what we do. And he trained with me for like 30 days, just would come in, hit the bags, do some stuff. And we became buddies, like I said. Then I'm in LA on business and I read an article about the Sugar Ray Robinson Foundation. It's in Los Angeles. So I in my rental car, I go find it and I go in, there's this, elderly secretary there. And I'm like, Sugar Ray Robinson is my oh my God. Like I'd watch fights of him every day. And I said, is there any chance that I could meet Mr. Robinson? And she said, look, he's in his 80s now. We don't know when he comes in. He comes in, he signs some autographs. And she says, to be honest with you, you seem like a sweet guy. He has, dementia from all the hitting and everything. And sometimes he doesn't even know. We just get him to sign a few things and he just comes in. And I said, well, do you mind if I just wait just in case? She says, okay, but like sometimes he doesn't come in all week. I sit there 3.5 hours later. He walks in and I'm like, oh my God. And she introduces us. He says, come in my office. We go in his office and you could see he's like disoriented. He goes, where are you from? I said, sir, I'm from Montreal, Canada. And he sits up, he goes, Montreal. He said, I fought so-and-so. And as soon as he started talking about fighting, it was like he was 30 years old. And I stayed with him for like an hour talking about fighting. He was completely lucid. We took pictures, autograph photo, and I might start crying right now. It was so emotional because he was so lucid. He remembered fighting in Montreal and it was amazing. But every one of those, Stallone, I became friends. I'm not friends with them anymore. I mean, we lost contact. But, Stallone, Sugar Ray Leonard, Brandon Lee, kind of fucking crazy, man.
Sugar Ray Robinson, that is fucking that's unbelievable.
Isn't that crazy?
Totally.
I had there's a great picture that I had it saved someplace. I can't remember what I did with it. There's a great image that I had for a while, and it was Sugar Ray Robinson in his prime, so it must have been in the 50s, and he had a pink Cadillac, and it was outside. Yeah. He had a bar or a restaurant in Harlem in New York. And it was just Sugar Ray and his, all these best clothes with his pink Cadillac outside his restaurant. And you're like, fuck, imagine being Sugar Ray Robinson in Harlem in the 50s. Like, fuck.
Yeah. And that's why I loved him because again, he was so tough and such a good fighter, but he was like, he was the perfect gentleman. He was a businessman. He was polite. And you remember when he had that dream about he had a dream that he was going to kill his opponent in a fight, right, and he wanted to call off the fight. And they said it's just a dream, and he ended up doing that. Holy shit!
Yeah, that's
crazy.
That's unbelievable, Tony. I don't think there's we've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes. So
what do we?
I can't think of a better place to leave a podcast than talking about Sugar Ray Robinson. And what I will say is, I think we'll have about another 5 or 6 podcasts here just talking about fighting, to be honest with you.
Right. But, anytime this was fun, and I didn't understand a word either of you said, but hopefully it pieced together. What I do want to say something because we're talking about boxing. Of course. Mm-hmm. Everyone has a plan until they get hit in the face. Everyone says Mike Tyson said that, and anytime they say that, I go, no, Mike Tyson paraphrased that. It was the great Joe Louis that said the original. You've heard that, like there's memes that right, and everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. It wasn't Tyson. Do you know that, of course, right? I
did not know that. I didn't know.
Okay, there you go. I figured you would. But it was Joe Louis that said almost something to the effect of, everyone's got a plan until they get hit.
Of course.
And then Tyson, and people don't realize that people misattribute it to Tyson all over the place. And if I'm close to them or friends with them, I'll DM them privately, not on their post. I'll go, hey, just so you know, look, I'm not a major one, but I'm a bit of a boxing historian. But Mike Tyson was a boxing historian too. He loved those guys.
Yeah, he was.
And so he quoted it one day, and because he was contemporary, people attribute it to him. But
because we're talking about the pressure and all this kind of stuff of fighting, could you imagine the pressure of being Joe Louis fighting Max Schmeling the second time, the rise in Nazi Germany, and was it Roosevelt had invited him to the White House and said, Joe, we need your muscles for democracy. Yeah. And he went out there and annihilated Max Schmeling.
And the world was different back then, right?
Yeah, that's insane. Like the pressure on you. And then, like Ali was saying, when Joe Louis got into some financial trouble, Mark Schmeling became, I think he was the head of Coca-Cola in Europe. And Mark Schmeling took care of Joe Louis. It's just amazing.
Right?
That was, amazing, man. Absolutely amazing. But yeah, that was interesting. Genuinely, I feel like we've got some. I don't know if it's our end or your end, Tony. We've had some a little bit of connection issues. It's been kind of freezing back and forward. So
just twice for a couple of seconds. It froze.
We had a couple.
Okay,
so,
shouldn't be.
But yeah, if you've got time, we could do it again, and I could talk fighting all day. That's
happy to if there's interest, happy to do another show with you guys.
One thing, what size of just because we talked about Loch Ness Monster earlier on, what size of top do you wear?
XL. I like my t-shirts. Yeah, XL.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I made a rash guard and for jiu-jitsu, and it's William Wallace rear naked choke on Loch Ness Monster. It's fucking it's really cool with tartan sleeves and everything.
Nice.
But I don't have any XLs left. What I'll do is I'll try and get my guy to make some, and we'll try and get one over to you.
No rash. Do you make them in t-shirts or just the rash guard?
Listen.
Good.
For you,
That's cool.
For you, if you want a t-shirt, I'll get them to make you a t-shirt.
Yeah. If you're printing stuff, throw a shirt in there, and send me your address and your sizes.
Yeah,
I'll send you some good. I'll send you some goodies.
Awesome.
This was fun. I don't know what your audience demographics like, but a lot of them are like, they didn't even fucking talk about it. They just talk about boxing the whole fucking time. Like it.
What else is there?
Yeah, that's
too bad, guys. Too bad.
Indeed.
It's what a great, the original Sweet Science. A lot to learn there.
Yeah, definitely. I think next time we can go into some more details about different areas of fighting. There was things that we haven't talked about, but yeah, it was brilliant. But there's so many things I want to talk to you about in terms of fighting, other martial arts and stuff. But we'll keep that for the next. You know what?
Hey.
The next time, maybe you're in Scotland and we could do it in person.
Yeah. If the world normalizes.
Yeah.
Weird shit, but we'll see. I mean, like I used to come over there every year at least once. I kind of miss it. Like 3 years ago, or actually, I was actually in the UK when they closed the borders and Heathrow was the last airport open.
Okay.
I was actually teaching there, and I was like, should I go home or not? And then it was like, I woke up to, okay, USA is closed. The only airport out, working in Europe was Heathrow, or in not. I think it was the only one, certainly in England.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of weird, but I got a lot of friends over there, and love Scotland for its history and people. And do either of you guys golf?
Just very, very badly.
Yeah, not for
really.
a long
Yeah,
time.
me too.
Yeah, not for a long time. But
I also played St Andrews badly many years ago.
Yeah,
friends that live played it really badly as well. So.
I loved it. I love the history up there. But no, like happy to do another one. You guys were a lot of fun to talk about, and we could, get into more specific stuff as far as training or fighting or whatever you want to talk about.
Awesome. Let's start winding this down. But just before we finally do, if you want to send anyone your way, Tony, where can we send them? On Instagram, the internet? You got anything you want to shout out? We'll add this in the notes as well.
So because I'm a threat to democracy, I'm shadow banned on Instagram. But you can try to follow me at Tony Blauer, and it'll warn you, are you sure you want to follow this guy? And but my corporate website is blauertrainingsystems.com. My last name, BLAUER, trainingsystems.com. If the stuff on fear management is of interest to you, I think my office probably sent you links to our ebook, Making Friends with Fear. I tell people start there. It's only 9 pages long, but it took me 40 years to write those 9 pages. Most people won't read a long book, but it's really a summation of some of my most potent ideas on changing a relationship with fear. And but yeah, Blauer Training Systems will take you to all our verticals, our law enforcement, military training, our scenario training, the coaching side of stuff. And I'm on all the other, LinkedIn and Facebook. Just Google Tony Blauer.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I think you may be the most interesting person, certainly for us as fight fans, you might be the most interesting person in the world. Some of those stories are incredible. And
I don't know about the most interesting, but I'll if it bumps me from, are you going to interview me instead of Marcus on the first of the year because of that? Or, what about
the idea of getting you both on?
What about both together?
That'd be funny. We should do a show like that.
That'd be hilarious.
I'd happy to do that.
Yeah, we can get that organized for. There's a date then, January 23. It'll be, won't it?
Yeah, we can do it. Maybe we could do that for a podcast before then. That sounds like a
I know that he and I would jump on next week to do one just to fuck around. It'd be
awesome
if we're not booked something. Okay, gentlemen, it was so good to meet you. Stay safe and hit me up whenever.
Awesome. Well, episode 76 of the Silly Goose Gang. Let's call it done and dusted.
The Silly Goose Gang Podcast.